Jeremy Vigay, he asked a little bit about what other pre-construction processes would you recommend? I'm going to recommend something to you in the next 20 minutes here, something we're building. You answered Andrew and Guillermo, thank you. And one other question that came in from Mark about barriers to adoption. I'll answer this one. There's been a lot of like, oh, I'm building AI for this, or I got this technology, let's go find a problem to solve. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have in our industry is starting with the problem and working backwards. Okay, well, what are people going to actually use to improve their lives, improve their work? And one big barrier to entry is building stuff that's far too powerful for the actual addressable market, right? Starting with what people can actually use and impact. And with that, I will lead into our little demo here of our product, Cnbuilder. Pedro is going to share his screen, and we'll work through here because a lot of what we're trying to solve with this project is exactly this. There's this idea of getting, removing the barriers, getting people to be able to access using web-based technologies, digital technologies, mobile technologies. And we'll get started. So I have Pedro, who's on the other side of the table, physically distant from me, helping me. So I'm going to talk and he's going to click. And I will ask for some of Brent's assistance here. This project looks a little familiar to you. Hey, Brent.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. So what is Cnbuilder Io? The idea is it's a fully web-based, 100% web-based. So there's no app, it just runs in the browser. It's a 5D, so 3D, 4D, 5D, 3D being the model and geometry, 4D being the schedule, 5D being the cost, site logistics planning and simulation product. So the idea is to actually use data and intelligence, not say digital paper or 2D with Excel, to just easily lay out your construction site, simulate how you're going to build it, find risks, optimize, and then share easily with your stakeholders. Now, our goal of this product is to democratize digital construction. We want to bring a high value, low effort, low cost solution to the marketplace that allows rapid simulation, different scenarios, what's 2 crane versus 3 crane. Yet the fully parametric, all the resources coming out of Cnbuilder are fully parametric, if it makes sense to be. So we'll show you the cranes are fully parametric, the hoist, et cetera. We'll show you in a live demo. Now, some things don't need to necessarily be parametric depending on the resource. It would be cones. It is still laid out parametrically based on like rules, but the parametric aspect, it depends. So why are we building this? And last thing, open BIM. So the idea is, we built our own converters from IFC 2x3, IFC 4, STEP, and FBX. Working in Revit, SketchUp, Tekla, CATIA, it doesn't matter. The idea is that you upload the model in here, and we actually have if you don't have a model, you can also create massing inside the product directly in the browser. It's very easy to do. We'll show you that. Why did we build this? So a lot of the themes we talked about today, right? This is just us providing solutions into the market, listening to people tell us their problems. And a lot of, pretty much 95% of the addressable market we deal with do their site logistics plans using what I would call a digital paper workflow, right? Basically a 2D PDF editor with some Excel. And this is the analog kind of process we're talking about. Once you flatten that and send it, email it, it's gone, right? There's no data, there's no intelligence. It's really hard to learn. It's really hard to scale from job to job. Richard mentioned how you're making similar mistakes over and over again. It's really hard to have that in a database.
Javier, I just want you to stop the screen there with where it says week 55 on the top of the drawing, and just to point out that the way we used to do this was literally tabloid-sized flip charts of paper, and you had to actually draw the stuff on there. And heaven forbid you didn't draw things right on one of them, you had to start over. And we did jobs that were 10 to 24 months, where each month end was a flip chart of how the logistics were going to be. Now, mostly multi-building sites, but this one here, one building, it certainly still helps to have the time scale shown as to what's happening and really can walk people through how the site's set up a certain way.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, at the bottom, or the scale market is kind of like 2D PDF editors, Excel. Top end of the market, you have maybe higher value solutions, but they're sophisticated. They require locally installed software. You need to be trained, expensive machines. So it leads to a lack of scaling in terms of industry. So by us starting from scratch, literally from scratch, and building it from scratch with customers on the front lines, the idea is to truly transform the digital workflow of pre-construction planning and superintendents moving forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to start live here. So this is a construction site. We've snapped in a drawing. We've overlaid that onto our site. When you start in Cnbuilder, you put the address in. It creates a map tile. You can choose with topography or without topography. This is a flattened view. And then you have a whole suite of tools to start planning your construction site. So what Pedro is doing right now is he's saying, okay, let's use Jersey barriers on the roadside and then just a traditional chain link fence. As you can see, every time you place a resource, this is parametric modeling happening directly in the web. So you're just clicking directly in your browser and generating new geometry, new information, and laying out your construction site.
Parametric I'm sure Brent is stretchable. That's the way I like to describe parametric. It means you can stretch it, but you can also add rules to it that say, if you stretch it beyond a certain amount, it adds another post inside of it or things like that.
Correct. Exactly. It's a rule-based. So now we're starting to do fencing. Now let's start doing accommodations. So again, we haven't done anything with a model yet. We just have a drawing that every job has. Often in early stage logistics, you might only have a drawing. Snap that in, and you go into a catalog of parametric resources. Just let's lay out our trailers here. So if you have a parametric trailer, you can start planning, okay, if I'm going to have over 50 people on site at any given time, we need to have 4 porta potties. We have to have the appropriate amount of accommodation area for your trades, your sub trades, and laying it all out. I know the actual project, Brent, you didn't have that much space, so good job, Pedro, by cooking the books.
Eventually,
cooking the books. Yeah. So we're not going to do every single thing here, but you get the idea. Let's go to traffic control. Huge on just about every site, especially those downtown sites where you have really tight sites, postage stamp sites. So let's start thinking about logistics around traffic. So cones, are you going to have to shut down one lane of the road during construction time? Do you need flaggers? How many flaggers they are? And one thing we didn't do that I was supposed to do, which we'll show you in a second, is every single thing that you're placing here into the scene is automatically syncing. We won't show it now, Pedro, let's just keep going, but it's placing into a master format cost histogram of your general conditions. So this is only the GCs required for operating the construction site. So if you have an 18-month build and you need crane from month 3 to month 17, you're capturing all the costs as you place it in the scene automatically as you're adding things to the scene. So if that flagger has an X dollars per hour rate, all that data flows into your site and logistics. Okay, so now we've started thinking about, you get the idea. There's a whole swath of site logistics plannings out of the box. Let's start thinking about excavation, Pedro. So let's get on top of the model. You can go in 2D or 3D mode and start planning the excavation. For now, we have kind of this drawing here that helps you guide. If you have grid lines, you want to reference inside Cnbuilder, makes it a little easier. But let's just, Brent, I'll ask you the question. You remember this job? I know we spent quite a bit of time in the ground coordinating. How deep roughly was this excavation? It was a pretty shallow one, was it a few meters only, right?
There wasn't really a basement, but we had some deep core footings, deep tower crane base, and underground water storage tank. We had to coordinate those things with all of the underslab plumbing. And one of the things I liked about working with you guys and the model was we could kind of imagine that we're in the ground looking up at the underside of the model as it pertained to all the footings and the coordination, and ask some of the right questions then about how to solve some of the problems with getting the plumbing from point A to B through all the footings without losing slope to drain.
There you go. Okay, fantastic. So this is a very shallow excavation. What Pedro is going to start doing now is visualizing the construction site during this milestone. So at the top here, as he's going, he's basically creating his 4D schedule and his milestone, saying, okay, I need to start excavating on this date. We're starting from the east side to the west, or however you want to do it. Now, we'll talk about it at the end. We have a whole huge system coming for excavation planning. But the idea is you can start visualizing, access, especially if you're doing phased excavation or detailed excavation versus bulk excavation, et cetera. So you can select that excavator, what dates are they going to be on site, and then store that as a milestone. So when you send this, which we'll show you after, you're actually just going to be able to send a link and you can visualize that. Now, one thing that's nice here, we've brought in the model. In this case, there's a BIM model created. You don't always have that, but you can start planning your sumps, footing elevations, slab on grade, this type of stuff. Now that we'll get to the next topic here, which is placing the crane. It's a big discussion. Just about every job, placing the crane is something that keeps people up at night. So now that we have the footings and foundation kind of visualized on the site, let's go ahead and show you 2 ways to model your crane on a construction site. The first one is just going to be going into equipment and vehicles, into your fixed cranes. We're going to grab something similar to what actually happened in real life, which is a tower crane located roughly there. So you just click and click. There you go. You got your tower crane. You can adjust all the parameters directly in the browser. You did a left-hand crane in this case. And then you can start to kind of like move the site. So this is a top-down approach where you actually have a smart parametric crane that you can start to toggle the different parameters. Say, okay, this is the best possible crane. Make sure you can make all the reaches for your laydown area, boneyard, all that kind of stuff, and then place that and visualize if it's not going to clash with footings, any issues with like sumps or below grade plumbing when you're placing your crane pad, for example. Right now, since we've done this job, Brent, we've tried to replicate Brent in an AI. so I want to show you now, which is a brand new feature we just launched, is with our AI-based crane location optimizer. So option one is you can just model it. So as a user, you start modeling on the site. Now what's coming, it's being pushed hopefully by the end of the week, if not early next week, is this process workflow where you start saying, okay, what are the critical lifts? So let's say you have an air handling unit that's 2 meters wide and a certain weight, 1,500 kilograms. Instantly, you just click on the building. So I got an air handling unit on the roof. It has to be located there, inside the steel in this case. Next step, you just start selecting your available cranes. No, I would do two. Go back. So click those two that have data, that one and that one. There you go. So now you have a couple options of cranes. Next thing you want to do is define your loading area. So you have to put your loading area and figure out what it is. We've already done it in this case where materials are coming to site. Now, really important, stay here, Pedro, go back. No fly zone. So if I think it came up in one of the talks where you don't have a permission to swing over the adjacent property, you can start to define that inside the algorithm, avoid zones and stuff like that. And then you can kind of define this before you run the optimization. Next, you're going to click into the minimum distance to the building and how many cranes that you're allowing in this scenario. Now, this is a pretty easy one, but let's run it. So this is happening live. It's going to take, whatever, depending on how big the algorithm is, it might take anywhere from 10 seconds to 5 minutes, depending on how complex it is. So what's happening right now is this genetic algorithm is going through all the selections the users defined, and it's actually going to create for you a bunch of different solutions. So this solution was interesting for you, Brent, right? You mentioned that if you were to do it again, you might add a second crane potentially to increase the cycle times and put them on the corners. So
we went fast enough, but
yeah. It was very fun. We're going to come back to that. But the really nice thing here is that, you can just click through and say, okay, here's the suggestions coming from the tool. And then as a user, you define. Now, this is a pretty simple one. Let's go to a more complex one, Pedro, we've already run. So this is a project that could have 3, 4, even potentially 5 cranes, has lots of multiple picks, has lots of issues with, where you're going to have your laydown area, et cetera. And we've run this in advance, but this is where it starts getting extremely valuable, right? We start having what's it look like at 3 cranes, 4 cranes, 5 cranes? What does it do in cycle time? What does it do to the schedule? Yes, you're paying more per crane, but you're reducing your schedule, obviously paying back for the owner faster, and so on and so forth. So we're really excited about this feature and providing more options for users to select the most important resource on most construction sites, the crane. Let's go back into the 4D scenario here. So now we're going to go to, Brent, we're going to talk to you pretty much Brock Commons. The goal was to build the concrete and the cores in the winter months, from what I understand. Roughly, what was it, about 4 months, from bottom of the ground?
4 months, yeah, around 2 months in the ground up to the podium, and another just over 2 months to build the cores.
Right, so we've started to simulate that.
That was with 2 stories at a time jumping form system that we had to come up with. Normally, the cores would have gone more slowly than that by about a month.
Great, so what we've done here is inside Cnbuilder, you bring in your model and you just split the model and say, okay, I want to do 2 floors a week on the concrete cores. And then we want to show maybe a detail. You can hide the envelope of the crane. It will probably help you a little bit visualizing it a little easier. So you go into the tools, you hide the parametric envelope. So you've used some of the biggest things on this project when you want to tell your story, where the connections from concrete, wood, and wood to steel, like those are the important things. So you can start inside your 4D scenario, drilling down even markups or different ways to analyze, in this case, the connections for the columns and when the columns and the panels come together. So again, this has already been set up for us where you start saying, okay, now it's about 2 floors a week. If correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, was your cycle times?
Yep, 2 floors a week.
And then those outriggers that were bringing in the materials on, leaving those unitized curtain wall or unitized facade panels out was a strategy from what I understand as well, right? You wanted to bring weight into the building because the mass timber is generally quite light structurally. Was that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, we were able to close up obviously the bottom half of the run there by the time we were using the top half, but yeah, we did it that way.
Okay, good. So now the really nice thing here is I'm actually going to share my screen from my phone. So the idea is normally you would do a PDF, stop sharing, and I'm going to share my phone. hopefully it'll let me here, share my screen. Hopefully my mom doesn't text me. She was texting me earlier. She's gonna tell me about how I never call her. Okay, let's try this. Is it working? Oh boy, here we go. We've tried this a lot of times. Start broadcast. Okay, tell me if you guys can see it. You're good? Oh, I'm sharing my screen. Yep. So now I'm seeing, so in advance, Pedro has sent this. This technology is fully web-based and is optimized for mobile. So if I just want to click through that same scenario that Pedro just gave me and say, okay, I want to visualize my below grade plumbing, I can do that. I keep running through the simulation. Here I'm going to start, okay, when I have the crane come in, I'm going to visualize where I'm going to have my mobile crane help install the tower crane, and so on and so forth. And we'll actually drop an example in the chat after we're done here. But the idea is that you can do it yourself. You can run the simulation in presentation mode, which will allow your client, let's say you're sending to a city inspector, they don't necessarily want to, you just push a button, it's called play, and it plays the 4D simulation and explains your site logistics much better than what you would do in a PDF with hashed lines and radiuses of cranes all over the place. So it's a one-click share type scenario. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Pedro's back. Good. Now, if we only have 6 minutes left, so let's talk about if you don't have, actually, let's go to the 5D cost histogram. So you just saw we've placed all this stuff live inside to the scene. What it's done is if you set up your database correctly, so you have your costs, your demob costs, your different types of incremental costs for different resources, it's automatically going to push here into this is the 5D element where you can kind of go through, in this case, by master format, get an idea of real-time costs. I remember talking with Tyler a long time ago when they were planning jobs at occasionally early stage, you say, I need a trailer or two, and they're $500 a month. And how many months do I need it for? I'm not sure yet, right? You can start really saying, okay, I need 5 trailers for $500 a month for 18 months, right? And really add that up. And then every time you use that resource in any project, it goes in the database. So next time you're building a 18-story mixed use, an 18-story hybrid mass timber concrete building, all your costs, your actual costs, you're going to be able to use it in the next pre-planning, right? So you're using the data that's coming from previous jobs to inform the next planning job, right? To understand and track these costs, okay? So let's get back into the massing. Now, a lot of times you're going to say, what if I don't have a model? So we've built, a basic, but still somewhat powerful massing tool. So directly inside the application, you can just say, snap in a drawing, get an elevation, say, okay, floor to floor heights are X. Here's the geometry of the building. And you can actually model this case, Vancouver House, pretty complicated project. And overall, it's pretty easy. You judge the floor heights. Really, for site logistics planning, you want to know where your boundary conditions are, right? Or where your access is going to be, where the crane tieback needs to be, these kind of things, so that you're able to do that directly in the product. Now, we want to talk about markups. We just pushed markups. Let's go back into there. We just pushed markups, which tie to your 3D, your 4D schedule. So if you want to be able to say, hey, Brent, we're looking at your connections from the CLT panels to the core, which was a really critical thing. You can store a markup and the camera is going to go down here. You have dimensions, you have sections, information, you just click through. So this is another way to make it really easy to share this information just with a web link directly to any phone. Click, 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 click. And the actual presentation, the camera moves to show those areas. Really good when you're talking about constructability, right? When you're saying, hey, am I actually going to be able to access and install this member that we thought we were going to? You just create a markup, and you can link it inside your schedule to say, at this point, I think it's a risk to do XYZ sequence. Okay, so what we're going to do is Pedro's going to show you how you just, instead of sending a file, now you can do 3D and 2D. So let's go back to the main one. So you can do 3D and 2D. So you can go 2D mode, 3D mode. We're going to be cleaning up, adding more features to the 2D for like title blocks and be able to put your kind of legends and everything. That's really nice. Right now it works to export this as a PDF, but the nicer way to do it, in our opinion, is just share the link. So what Pedro's going to do, we'll have it expire tomorrow. And he's going to drop it in the chat here. So what day is it today? Yeah, so have it tomorrow, but with presentation mode, please. So you can select with presentation mode and then 1 second delay, and it's going to generate a link. We're going to drop this in the chat here to everyone. You're welcome to click this with your phone. Click this with your computer and run it. So now you're the persona of the client or the stakeholder maybe the city inspector, your client that wants to validate your sequence. Now, in the product, you can have multiple scenarios. So you could look at one crane versus two cranes. So two crane has two hoists, double core hoist versus single car hoist. All those resources are directly in the product. And if one click, you can share. They don't need credentials. They access the link and they're in there. So my last kind of call to act, I should probably say the next big features coming are, and we talked about this with Brent, excavation planning. So we're going to be able to model your excavation, do your bank volumes and detail excavation, figure out if you're going to do anchors versus shoring, et cetera. We're also going to have a whole bunch of other features coming around optimization soon as well. So we're really passionate about this. And again, the idea is to democratize this, make it easy for anyone to use, superintendents, project managers, not just the techies, and be able to just replace kind of more analog ways of doing this work. So my call to action is if you're interested in this product, please go to Cnbuilder.io. You can request a private demo. You can start your free trial immediately without, it won't bug you. I might email you to welcome you in and give you, some links, but we'd love for you to try it out and go from there. I think we're literally on the minute. Did I miss anything? Is the software prepared for linear civil works? It is. It depends how linear, and Tyler and his team tested us to the max. We had to get the devs involved and increase our map tile size. What did we get to, how many kilometers? We're up to the large map tiles. So we're at about one, as long as it's not longer than 1.5 kilometers in size, right now anyways. And if you're larger than that, talk to us and we'll see what we can do. But yeah, if you want to do like multi-phase, more horizontal work, the product works well for that as well. Of course, the features we're showing is more vertical in this case.
Another question about
yeah, so I answered that. So the resources inside the product itself that come out of the box are parametric, and what you upload from, say, Revit or Tekla or CATIA, et cetera, it depends on how the model was formed. And you can access that data inside the tree directly in the product, but it also, the idea is the model is there for a reference to simulate your construction site and do logistics.